Now, as we promised, time to be joined by the legend, Evan Silva. You can follow him at Evan Silva on X, co-founder of Establish the Run, one of the best fantasy football and really NFL betting resources out there. He's a fantasy football originator. And Evan, I saw on X that you guys even have custom mugs between you and Adam of your faces for Establish the Run. How about that?
Yeah, it's it happened because I went to well, this guy hit me up in our Discord. We have like this big Discord with a ton of people in there. If you're a subscriber in any way, you get to Establish the Run. You get access to our Discord. And this guy hit me up before the Week 18 Packers Bears game, and he was like, "Yo, man, I run all the concessions at Lambeau Field, and we have 4 extra spots in a suite for Bears Packers." And I was kind of like, "Geez, okay, what could that entail?" And I showed up. This guy is like the mayor of Green Bay. I mean, he knows everyone. He literally runs all the concessions in and around Lambeau Field. We get up to the suite, and this guy has like made it like a shrine to Establish the Run. And he even has like cookies with our faces on the cookies. And I don't know, it was just incredible. So then I tweeted that out, and then this guy who runs an engraving business in New Jersey was like, "Hey, man, I can put your face on the side of the Stanley Cups or the Yetis or whatever." And I was like, "Okay." So then he did that, and yeah, I don't know, they're awesome. They're like awesome quality cups too. I mean, it's kind of like narcissistic at this point. What am I going to tell the guy no? Like I had to take him up on that.
Yeah, Stanleys are becoming the big thing, whether it was a Stanley or a Yeti. You got to take anybody up on that offer for sure. But the people came to hear your prop betting advice and really just betting advice for both conference championship games. So before we get into the spreads, and you have bets plural on both of them, looking at the quarterback props for the AFC title game, rushing yards wise, Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. Mo and I were discussing this in the first half of Beat the Closing Number this week, that I think the overall consensus, or maybe the novice notion, is you bet Lamar rushing yards over because of the plus matchup. But he and I both agree with you that the number may be inflated at this point, but
Mm-hmm.
you're not only looking at Jackson under, you're looking at Mahomes over. So what's your reasoning there?
Yeah, so with Lamar, well, the Chiefs, the way that they play it and how they've played against movement-based quarterbacks, I shouldn't say movement-based, but just movement-oriented plus movement quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson, is they want to keep him moving east-west and not north-south, and they go out of their way to stop him as a runner. Um, so I think that that's what they're going to do. On the other side, Patrick Mahomes just has this long-standing tendency to run more and to run highly efficiently in like do or die, make or break type games. In the playoffs, he's consistently run more and run for more yards, and in like make or break late season games as well. And I think he could definitely get to 27 and a half. I also think that he's going to be under a lot of pressure because the Chiefs' offensive tackles are not very good in pass protection. Actually, they're bad in pass protection. And so I think that that may lead to more scrambling opportunities for Patrick Mahomes.
And you brought up the Chiefs' offensive line. So a huge injury that could impact things, not only
Yep.
with those exploitable tackles, but I'm with Donovan Smith, but also Joe Tooney, who suffered that pec injury against the Bills, and
Mm-hmm.
all the stunts that Mike McDonald, the Ravens defensive
Yep.
coordinator, and this Ravens defense overall runs. How do you expect the chess match to go between Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and Mike McDonald in this elite Ravens defense?
Yeah, and it's of particular concern because Justin Madubuike has emerged as like one of the best interior pass rushers in the NFL, going up against a Joe Tooney-less Chiefs offensive line, and I think that that's going to lead to more double teams on the interior, which means less help typically for the tackles. So I mean, I think that that's a real concern for Kansas City, and actually why I'm going part of the reason of why I'm taking the Ravens at -4.
All right, and let's continue along here before we get back to the point spread.
Okay.
Looking at another receiving yards prop, positive sense for the Ravens with one of their tailbacks. And there's been a lot of pull and tug between whether it's Gus Edwards or Justice Hill, who's the beneficiary against an exploitable Chiefs defense. But you're not looking at a Ravens running back in that regard. You're looking through the air. So why do you like Hill's receiving yards over this week?
I think that Justice Hill over the past, I don't know, 3-4 weeks has looked really the best that he ever has in his NFL career. He's looked like, he's given them some juice since Keaton Mitchell went out for the season, and his role has grown because Gus Edwards, I mean, Gus Edwards will get what's blocked, but you kind of know what you're going to get with Gus Edwards. And the Ravens offense under Todd Monken, is more passing oriented, more oriented toward passing to the running backs than Greg Roman's was, the previous Ravens offensive coordinator. And Justice Hill has kind of capitalized on that increased opportunity. And I mean, it's just not many yards to get. What is it, 12 and a half? Yeah. So, I mean, I think he'd get there maybe on one catch, and I think he gets like 2 or 3 catches.
All right, and then let's wrap it up receiving yards prop wise for this AFC title game. A few others you're looking at, if you don't mind breaking those down.
Yeah. So I like the under on Rashad Bateman at 22 and a half receiving yards. I think that Odell Beckham is going to play a bigger role than he did last week when he only ran 8 routes. Surprisingly, also, Mark Andrews is going to be back. So that's going to take away from Rashad Bateman. I think this is like a 15-yard game maybe for Rashad Bateman. And the Chiefs' perimeter corners are really good. And Bateman primarily plays on the perimeter. Mark Andrews is back. He practiced fully twice last week. I actually thought he had a good chance to play last week, but there was a quote that came out from Mark Andrews. He's like, close is not good enough. I want to make sure that I'm at 100% when I return, and he has practiced fully all this week. I think that over 34 and a half receiving yards for a healthy Mark Andrews is an absolute steal. I'm taking Rashee Rice under 59 and a half receiving yards. Rashee Rice is the Chiefs' primary slot receiver, and Kyle Hamilton for the Ravens is an absolute stud slot corner, and the big kind of slot corner that can match up with Rashee Rice physically. And that kind of takes care of my receiving yards props for Ravens Chiefs.
And jumping back to Andrews for a second, good
Yeah.
buddy of ours, Connor Allen, brought up a great stat on X with Zay Flowers, and when they're both on the field between Andrews and Flowers, and how
Mm-hmm.
Flowers hasn't been nearly as efficient, which you would
Mm-hmm.
expect, but a 16.3% target share, 0.16 targets per route run. Did you consider Flowers under receiving yards, or did you think his prop was lying correctly?
Um, I like kind of stay away from Zay Flowers because I just know how explosive he is, and he can mess things up because he can make big plays. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a shy away situation.
And wrapping up the AFC title game with the point spread, the line opened for a very brief moment. Ravens -2.5 on Sunday night, quickly got bet up to Ravens -3.5 and even money. But we've seen even more action coming on Baltimore over the course of the week, as Mo and I discussed. Now, almost consensus wise, Ravens -4, but you're still laying it there with Baltimore.
Yeah, I am. This is obviously for the late week betters. But I mean, a lot of people make bets late in the week. I got my bets in early, especially on the other one. I went on the other point spread for the other game. We'll get to that. Went real hard on that when that opened. But yeah, I mean, I think that the Ravens have kind of proved themselves to be the best team in the NFL this year. I mean, they pantsed the 49ers when they played. And I think the 49ers are the most talented team in the NFL, but I think the Ravens have shown themselves to be the best team in the NFL. And the Chiefs have you can make an argument that they're peaking at the right time. I mean, they've played some of their best football late in the season and in the playoffs to date. So I mean, it's not a super comfortable one by any means. Um, but you talk about the I mean, the Ravens' offensive line is healthy right now, and the Chiefs' offensive line is not, and it already had problems. And I think a lot of times when you look at just who is going to win the battle of the trenches, that's the side that I want to be on, and I think the Ravens are going to win the battle in the trenches.
On to the NFC Championship game, and let's stay on the point spread because you brought that up. 49ers actually up to a juiced -7 as of this recording on Thursday, even 7.5 starting to pop in San Francisco's direction, even money. And handicapping this one, you said you went hard on San Francisco. So dive
Yeah.
into that at least early in the week when this was on Sunday night, opened around -6.5.
Yeah, and that's when I took it, and I feel real good about it because then it went through the 7, and I still like it. Obviously not nearly as much because 7 is so key, but I still like it because I think the 49ers, and I even teased it to, or I went with the alternative spread at 13.5. I think the 49ers can smoke the Lions. I also noticed that the public is really big on the Lions right now, like really big, like they're getting 70% of the bets, and I don't like that, you know. So I think the 49ers, again, are the most talented team in the NFL. And I think that they're going to have success really in every way against Detroit, which doesn't typically play, its best football on the road and is very exploitable defensively. And I don't know. I just look. The Lions had a really nice run, and I think it's going to come to a screeching halt here. The 49ers really take care of business.
Yeah, and you brought up all the public money coming in on Detroit or bets wise. I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
look at cover rate in the NFL, Lions have the highest cover rate in the league. So, what is that going to attract? Novice bettors and public bettors, especially after the way Brock Purdy looked. Would you correlate Purdy's performance? I mean, it seems like you're super high in San Francisco. So, would you kind of dissect what Brock Purdy did or didn't do against Green Bay more so just solely to the weather? Because there's so many narratives around Purdy this year, whether you look at that 3-game lull mid-season
Yeah.
when he was dealing with the concussion or last week against Green Bay.
Well, there were several factors, and you're right. He did not play very well, really, for the majority of the game. He played well late, and he made enough plays for them to get that victory. But he missed a surprising amount of easy throws, just flat missed them. And I think that you can attribute it partly to the weather. I mean, that was driving rain at times during that game. It was more of a weather affected game than I anticipated it being. And also, the 49ers offensive line isn't great, and the Packers have a lot of really individual talented defensive front 7 members, and they won the battle in the trenches in that particular game. And I think that Brock Purdy was pretty uncomfortable when you combine the pass rush and the weather. And they also lost Deebo Samuel on the first or second drive. And it looked like he was going to be a really big part of the game plan because he had 2 catches for 24 yards right out the gate. And then you saw what happened when he went out. They were throwing a ton to Juwan Jennings. They even gave him a handoff, and Chris Conley played a bigger role. I think that Deebo Samuel is going to play in this game, as we're doing this on Thursday, and he returned to a limited practice today. That to me is a signal that they're trying to ramp him up to play. So, yeah, I expect Brock Purdy to be much more comfortable this week. Deebo to play, and all the other dudes are healthy too.
And on the flip side of the ball for Detroit's offense, not nearly as many props for you betting wise for this game, but you're looking at the Lions tight end Sam LaPorta, who played well over the last couple weeks, and both defenses in respect to the Rams and the Bucks could be exploited over the middle of the field, but that isn't necessarily the case with San Francisco, and
Right.
LaPorta's receiving yards prop is sitting at 49.5. So how are you playing it?
Yeah, and this is also tied to the fact that I don't think that Jonah Jackson, the Lions' left guard, is going to play. So if, his backup needs help, and Frank Ragnow, the stud center, is also a little bit banged up. That's concerning to me. if Jonah Jackson's backup, needs help on the interior, uh, then that's going to take away from the Lions' ability to get help to the tackles on the outside. They don't necessarily need as much help as some of the other, like the Chiefs, for instance. But LaPorta might have to do a little bit more blocking. Um, and as you mentioned, like the 49ers have like a ton of athleticism in the middle of the field, namely Fred Warner. They haven't given up anything to tight ends really all season. Um, this one's a little scary because I love Sam LaPorta. He's now 2 weeks removed from that hyperextended knee and bone bruise. So it's a little bit scary, but people want to bet props, and I think that this one makes sense because it's not a good matchup, and I do think that he might have to end up blocking a little bit more than usual. Brock Wright is also not going to play, and he is the Lions' primary blocking tight end. So, I think that that's another notch against Sam LaPorta.
Great nuggets overall, breaking down the handicap of that prop. And you go back to last week, just for me, man, just to kind of vent a little bit about the Bucks Lions game. I had Bucks plus 6.5. I don't know if you bet the point spread in that one, but if Jamel Dean didn't go down, and I know it was one drive, but I remember a week 17 game, Saints Bucks, Zion McCollum got absolutely torched by Derek Carr throughout that game. And what happens when Dean goes out last week? I don't know if the Bucks would have won outright, but probably cover against Detroit. Maybe you see less public money, to your point, on the Lions this week if they don't cover and that streak ends. But man, McCollum got absolutely picked apart on that touchdown drive. I think the last final possession for the Lions, or second to last, when Amon-Ra St. Brown holding that touchdown against McCollum. So, and while the 49ers defense has been exposed a little bit in the second half of the season, still a much more sure and trustworthy defense than what Tampa Bay had, especially over the middle of the field.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Bucks were extreme pass funnel because they're pretty good against the run, and you can really beat them up, especially when they lose Dean, really beat them up with the pass, and not the case for San Francisco.
Last prop to touch on, Lions backfield. Mo brought up in the first half of the podcast, David Montgomery over rushing yards. So not necessarily juxtaposed to that, but you're looking at Jahmyr Gibbs through the air. How are you playing his receiving yards?
Yeah, and this is because I think that the 49ers are going to get a lead in this game. And when the opponent against the Lions gets a lead, Jahmyr Gibbs' playing time typically goes up. And, again, I think that the 49ers could give Amon-Ra St. Brown a little bit of trouble. I'm kind of down on Sam LaPorta in this particular game. And so I think that Jahmyr Gibbs could become a really big factor in the passing game against San Francisco. So I like the over on 22.5 receiving yards for him. I also like the ladders, and that's the alternate receiving yards. You could play him up to on DraftKings specifically. If he goes over 70 receiving yards, you get it at 11-1. And then 60 receiving yards is, I think, plus 650 or something like that. Like, I like all of those plus money bets. And it's a way of giving yourself a chance to make some real money as opposed to, all these relatively, give or take the even money bets.
Absolutely. No, love the look there too. So overall, man, you got 14, 15 bets if you want to count the 49ers alt spread. So what do you want from our listeners, viewers, if you cash on maybe 60, 70% of them? You want cupcakes with your faces on them? How do you want to play this?
No, I just want the people to be happy and for me to get more right than I get wrong.
Don't we all? Especially on the rough weeks. But he is Evan Silva at Evan Silva on X, co-founder of Establish the Run, fantasy football originator. I remember listening to Evan and Ross Tucker, who I have a so-so relationship with these days, going back to my high school days. And again, custom mugs, custom cupcakes, custom cookies. We're sending it all your way. I'm sorry if you don't want them, but if you cash on 80%, I'll send you all three. So that'll do it for this edition of Beat the Closing Number. Big thanks to Evan Silva for joining the show. I meant what I said, one of the best fantasy football and player prop gurus out there. Be sure to follow him on X at Evan Silva. And be sure to follow Mo on X at Mo Noir, 2 W's. You can follow me at Eli Hershkovich. And if you decide to tail or fade any or all of our bets, you could do so with BetMGM promo code. First-time users can use BetMGM promo code, the line's one word, to get up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Remember that bonus bets are not equivalent to real money. You can check out all of our bets, any ads for both conference championship games in the Lines Discord channel. Link is over at thelines.com in the top right-hand corner. Subscribe and get notifications in the roll section. If you subscribe to YouTube, give the video a thumbs up and ring the bell to our YouTube channel, or 5-star rating and review on Apple, Spotify. Both really help boost the podcast, and you could compete in our free contest this weekend to win Amazon gift cards over at play.thelines.com. So for Mo, who's now on a flight, I think, and for Evan, for myself, Eli Hershkovich, thanks for watching and listening to another edition of Beat the Closing Number. Good luck on your conference title game bets. Go Ravens, especially those of you who have futures bets. So long, everybody.